welcome back. Recently I've been wanting to try out some the Warhammer stuff, so I whipped out to the local games workshop and bought myself the cheapest set of Orks I could find. These are Ork Gretchens, and the reason I bought the cheapest ones is because, well, to be honest, I didn't know if I was going to like it or not. So anyway, here you are, you see me taking them out of the box and having a look at them, and I have a bit of a brief look at the instructions, but to be honest, there isn't much that you have to do with them. One thing I was surprised of was the sheer size of them. They're a lot smaller than I actually thought they was going to be, which put me into panic mode straight away, because I thought, how the hell am I going to paint these? So, getting to it, I've got my magnifying glass there, as you can see. I tried to use the magnifying glass when it came to painting, but while it does magnify, it distorts as well, so I couldn't actually put the brush in the right place in the end. So really I just ended up using the magnifying glass to see what bit was what, and working out whether it was flesh, bit of metal, a bit of fur or whatever. So as you can see, I get on with it. I start cutting bits off and trimming the extra bits off there and getting them as tidy as I possibly can. With these Ork Gretchen, all you've really got to do is glue arms and heads on, and even then, with some of them, they're already complete. As for glue, I just used some of the Tamiya thin plastic glue. Worked pretty well. I don't know what anybody else uses, or if there's a games workshop glue specific for these, but the glue I've used, it's done the job, and all the pieces have held on quite well. I imagine they're going to be quite fragile and you're going to have to be quite careful with them, but I'm not actually planning on doing any wargaming as such. I just wanted to paint some of these figures, make some scenery for it. I'm really into the look of tabletop gaming, wargaming kind of scenery. I really love it. So as you can see, I'm just trimming off some more bits and bobs and getting the figure all glued up. Unfortunately, if each character has a name, I don't actually know what the names are. In this particular set, you get, I think, 10 small Gretchen and one larger Ork with a squig, I believe. I think what I'm putting together here is the larger Ork with the squig. Just choosing which components I'm going to put on it, because you do get the choice of a couple of heads and a couple of weapons. So I chose which head, which weapon, cut them out and stuck it all together basically. So there's the larger Ork and squig all assembled and ready for paint. I decided to leave it for a while to make sure the glue would set up good and proper. And now I've put a British pound coin next to it just to show you a size comparison. The actual character isn't much taller than the pound coin as it is. And this really made me panic about how the hell am I going to paint this, but we'll get there. So that's all the minis assembled that needed it, and they're all just waiting there, letting the glue dry up, and we'll be moving on to painting very shortly. To start off with, I actually blue tacked the mini to a bottle cap, because I just at this point don't have one of them miniature holders at the minute. It kind of worked, but I guess because it wasn't a big nice big long handle. It just kind of, well, didn't work in the end. So eventually I just grabbed a bit of the Mini that wasn't wet or wasn't painting at the time and held it between my fingers, which, trust me, is not an easy task. So parts of these Minis are unbelievably sharp, and yes, I did draw blood. So I grabbed the smallest brush I've got, and I believe it was War Flesh. How do you say that? War, I don't know. Anyway, and started painting the skin. I went through all the Minis painting the skin, just to save messing about washing the brush every time I need to change colours or whatever, and just went on from there. Although I hadn't really done much painting with the Minis, I wanted to have a break from them because I was getting backache, neck ache, headache. It really is, for me, a strain painting these little miniature figures. So what I decided to do was start work on the diorama that I want to put with them. So what you see here is I've got a small plastic plant pot. I really like the shape of it. I thought it would make a good fort. First thing I had to do was basically cover up the holes in the bottom of the cover up the holes in the bottom of the plant pot. The bottom of the plant pot, as you will see, is eventually going to become the top of the building. So just simply drill around it, cut out a round bit of cereal box card, and glued it on. I wanted to cover the sides of the pot with basically metal sheet panels. From what I've learnt about the Orks, they're great builders, but they don't really take too much pride in its appearance. It's I think for them more function than form. So again, grabbing more cereal card, I started cutting strips, and then eventually cutting the strips into rough shapes, rectangles, squares of different lengths and sizes, which again will eventually be glued onto the side of the plant pot to represent metal sheeting. I printed out a few sheets of various advertising posters, a lot of which I've never heard of. I just printed them out because I thought they looked good. Different brands, sizes, pictures, colours, you'll name it, there's quite a lot. And I thought it'd be quite good to cut out a couple of the signs and glue them to a bit of card, and eventually you will see that they become parts of the panelling for the Ork building I'm making. So with a little bit of tacky glue, just glued them on to the card and let them dry. Eventually I'll be cutting them out, and well, you'll see what I do with them sooner or later. So I've been really looking forward to this bit. The image I had in my mind, I couldn't wait to see if that's how it turned out. So I broke out the hot glue gun, got it warmed up, and started sticking all the bits of square card to the sides around the outside of the pot. It was quite an easy task. I did burn myself a couple of times on the glue, but such is life, I guess. It just stings for a bit, it ain't that bad. So unlike when you're doing brickwork and you've got to be a bit careful and a bit tardy, I really enjoyed this because it was just a case of grabbing whatever bit of card and sticking it on. Didn't matter if it was straight, level, flat, nothing. Didn't matter one bit. And I really loved the fact that I could do exactly what I wanted, how I wanted. So I've got this pot pretty much covered now. I'm just sticking on the last few bits where I thought was needed. It was quite a enjoyable process to do, really easy. You know, no hard and fast rules, or if there was, I've certainly broken them. But, you know, gonna let the glue set up properly and get to paint. So I've got to admit, I do like it when it gets to this point. Everybody says the same, but it's correct. Once you start getting a coat of paint on it and it all ties together, you really start to see it, come alive. It brings everything together and you can see where you're heading with it. Anyway, as you see, I started out painting this by hand. It was basically simply black acrylic paint mixed with PVA. I don't know if it makes much difference with card, but I went with it and it's been alright. You know, there ain't been no problem. You will notice there a bit of cross stitch mesh. I thought I'd shove that in to act as like a window kind of thing. I don't think I showed you that earlier, but I really like that method of creating windows, I suppose. So I'm trying to brush all this with this brush, and there's, as you'll imagine, a lot of underbrushing or bits to brush under, lots of crevices and cracks, and frankly I got a bit pissed off with it and I put the brush down in the end and went out and sprayed it with a rattle can. Much easier. So this is the bit that all scares the shit out of me, really, when you start to add the colour. I'm not the best painter in the world, I admit. I'm still learning a lot, what colours do what and what brush techniques do what and so on and things like that. But what I decided on was a coat of silver. It was going to be a dry brush, but as you saw straight away it was too heavy. So I just give it a really quick, dirty, rough covering. Not minding at all if the black showed through. In fact, I thought, you know, it'd only add to the effect. So as you can see, excuse me. So as you can see, I'm rough painting all over it with the silver to get that base colour on. So my next stage was to paint some of the panels. I chose a nice deep strong red, and I can't remember where I saw this technique. I really should have found out before recording this, but what I'm basically doing is I'm half roughly painting individual panels, but I'm not going up to the edges. I'm leaving the edges as silver to try and suggest that paint has chipped and flaked away, been scratched and banged about. Hopefully it will show that it's a bit of a rough, probably reused bits of metal and what have you. So I'm just going around the whole building and I'm going to pick out the odd panel here and there. Do you remember earlier when I made the small signs out of the printouts I made? Well, this is what I've done with them. I've made it so hopefully it looks like the Orks have found an old metal sign and used it as part of the building. Kind of fluffed up a bit here. I forgot to press record, but what I've got here is the start of a bit of a watchtower. I've made it out of coffee stirrers and bamboo kebab skewers. It's all just glued together with hot glue, and now what I'm doing is just getting a few more bits of skewer to cut and glue in as supports for the legs. To panel off the back of the watchtower, I'm just using some corrugated card that I picked up from the Works. Just cutting bits roughly to size. Again, no hard and fast rules, nothing has to be perfect. So just cutting the card and gluing it on. Again, to simulate metal, start off with a base coat of silver, painting all the corrugated card, and later on I will dirty it up with, a wash or other colours of paint, whatever I feel like at the time. Following this, for the woodwork, I just used a very, very watered down burnt umber. It was more of a wash than a paint in the end, and I just blathered this on all over. Again, roughly, doesn't have to be clean and perfect and tidy, just as long as it's all covered. Unfortunately, I've lost a load of footage. As you can see, I've added rivets and pipework to the main building. Much needed detail, I thought. And I've also built a generator, as you can see there, out of various bits and bobs that I had laying around. Bit of a washing machine waste pipe, a couple of nut covers and some wire. I want to add all of these items to a base, so I've got them laid out roughly how I want them, and I'm now just taking a few minutes to measure out roughly the size I need for the base. For the base, I'm going to be using a piece of insulation board, and I'll just chop it by hand and do whatever I need to do with it. With the foam board cut to size, I've replaced the objects to make sure I've got enough space left and make sure that I'm happy with the position of things. So I grabbed my Sharpie and just roughly mark out an outline to show where I can cut to create outcrops and rock faces. I tend to find with this that if you think about it too much, it won't work out right. So what I ended up doing is just grabbing my knife and I just started chopping at it. And I tried to make them look decent and what have you, but really I was just chopping at it and hoping for the best. Really, just really having a go at it and enjoying myself making a mess. So I've had a good chop at it, hacked away, and I'm pretty pleased with the outcome. Although there's no paint on it, I can see where it's heading and I'm quite happy with it really. For the ground cover I'm using sand, PVA glue and paint all mixed in together again. I really like this method. It's simple, it's cheap and it's effective. It leaves a great texture. So I just got some mixed up in a tub, covered the base with a covering of PVA because I find it tends to stick better, and get it spread it out. Chuck a load on, spread it out with a spoon, and once it's fully covered I grabbed a 1-inch decorating brush and kind of stabbed at it, stippled it to kind of level it out a bit but also add to the texture. I didn't want to leave this just one dark brown colour, so I grabbed out a couple of tester pots that I had of emulsion, a cheapo brush, and just started throwing some other colours on it. I don't know where Orks come from, but in my mind this is exactly what it looks like. Well, that's what I'm saying, because truthfully it didn't turn out like I wanted, and I feel like I might have cocked it up a bit. I wanted to add some grit and bits to the base just to add a bit more texture and what have you. And by some freakish coincidence, I had two different sizes of grit that just so happened to be more or less the same colour as the paint I'd thrown on the base. Don't ask me how I did this. I didn't even know what colour the grit was. It was a kind of last minute thought. But as you can see, it blends in lovely. So thank you whoever creates miracles, because you certainly gave me one there. I think you've helped me save this base, because I wasn't really happy with it, but I'm kind of getting there. I wanted to add some lighting to this diorama, and I just happened to have this set of string lights. I think there's about 20 bulbs in the string altogether, which is way more than I need, but eventually you'll see how I get around that. One thing I've noticed is that as much as I enjoy doing my dioramas, a lot of the time they seem to lack life, and I thought if I add some lights to it, it might help. So what I do to get started is I drill a hole through the base under where the little fort's going to be to feed the wires through. I also needed to cut a recess underneath the base to house the battery box, so that was quite straightforward. I just put my fat head in the way, draw around the box, and cut it out. The next job was to simply feed the light string through the base from the bottom up to the top, getting them all through so I've got plenty of slack to play with and make sure I can position them exactly where I want them. With the lights all pulled through, I grabbed some of the bamboo kebab skewers I have. These I'll be using as posts, I guess, to suspend the string lights up in the air with. Basically all I end up doing really is drilling holes to push the skewers into with a cheap pin vise I've got. It's only a cheap one, but it works really well. And then going around and putting in a post where I want them. Now I'm just going to go around and trim the posts down to what I think is a suitable size. It's only really by eye, you know. If I believe in, if it looks right, it is right. So I'm going to go around, trim them all down. I'm not going to glue these in. They hold quite well into the insulation board just by themselves, so I'm not going to glue them in, because if I want to in future I can remove them quite easily without causing any damage. So all the posts are trimmed down to height. I've given them a bit of a wash with just some a little bit of brown, a little bit of red and black mixed with water just to make them look a bit grimy. I'm now going to start wrapping the string lights around each post. Again, I'm not gluing them in place. They're holding quite well because the wire of the string lights is actually copper, so it does hold its shape well. What I'm having to do though is start at the point where you can see with the last bulb on the string, working my way around the diorama, and you will see that once I get to the end, any excess wire and bulb I can coil up and either leave under the fort or tuck it into the recess under the board. So what I'm about to do here is the last bit of lighting. What I'm trying to do here is wrap it around the last post and then take it down the post, but leaving enough slack to let it sit under the fort. As you can see, there's a lot of slack there. I'm just pulling it back through to underneath the board and fine tuning it so it don't pull on anything or make the fort lift up or whatever, and in the end it ends up to be quite tidy. So with all the posts and bulbs in place, I thought it's about time I checked to make sure they were still working. The slightly annoying thing about this set of lights is that there's like 8 or 9 different settings, and it's like 7 clicks till I get to the one I want, which is just a constant light, as you can see here. I do think though that they scale well. They're not overpowering, they're not too bright, and they've given a really good effect. Just another view of it with me work light out, so you can see a better view and get the better effect from it. So there we have it, the completed diorama. Quite happy with it. I've not glued any of the buildings down or anything like that, or even the figures, because I thought if I wanted to use them on something else then I could do. They all sit there quite nicely without any glue or support of any kind, so I'll leave it as it is for now. And just to show you what it looks like lit up with the string lights, pretty good effect, not too bright. Right, so that's the end of this build and the end of this video. Quite a bit longer than what I normally put out, so hopefully if you've made it this far you've at least enjoyed watching. You know, as I mentioned, it is my first attempt at kind of 40k Warhammer, the Ork kind of thing. Different kind of scenery from what I'm used to doing, different kind of building, and it's been a nice change. I've thoroughly enjoyed it and I will most definitely be doing it again. As soon as I can afford to get some more minis, I'll be having a go. I don't know whether I'll get more Orks or Marines or whatever there is. There's, as you know, there's countless to choose from, but no doubt I will be doing some more. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Sorry it's gone on for so long. I just wanted to get it all in on one video really. So thanks for watching, and I hope I will see you in my next video. Thanks a lot. Bye for now.